Hi, this is David White from Sportsman's Emporium, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about rigging up a strike indicator for fly fishing and put one on your leader. You know, strike indicators are basically, they're what they sound. They sound like they're strike indicators. So basically, it helps you indicate when a fish is taking your fly when you're fishing underwater with nymph flies and subsurface flies. Obviously, if you're fishing dry flies, they're floating on the surface and you can see the fish. But if you're fishing nymphs, especially if you don't have your technique down, in particular the high stick drifting technique of nymph fishing, it can be really hard to detect your strike because there's a lot of your leaders in the water. It's usually going to be 9 feet long, and a lot of slack and play will come in it. And if you don't have something, a lot of times those fish will suck the fly in and spit it out really quick. Trout don't tend to take a fly and run or hit a lure and run like bass do. You know, they're more of, they'll sip it a lot of times, and it's really difficult to detect when they're doing that. So, you know, in recent years they've started making plastic strike indicators, and there's also yarn ones, and there's even little foam ones. But by far, this is called a thingamabobber, and this is the most popular strike indicator, especially for steelheaders. So I'm going to show you how to rig this up and talk about how to apply it to the stream and make it work for you. So I'm going to start with the leader here. This is actually a little bit short of a leader. It's 7.5 foot, and on average on the trout streams around here I'll probably have a 9-footer on. But I'm going to basically unroll this leader and get it out, and I'm going to use the heat friction from my fingers to take some of these curls out of it and get that memory out so that it straightens out some. Makes this a little bit easier. But what I'm going to do, you know, when you're fishing strike indicators, you know, they have a bunch of different kinds that you can tie on. It's kind of a permanent knot. And also the little stick-on ones, which are kind of stuck where you stick them to. But I like to have something like the thingamabobber if I'm going to use them, because I want to change the placement of my indicator based on the depth of the water I'm fishing. So if I'm fishing a run in a trout stream that's 4 feet deep, you know, I want my fly to be at the right location. I don't want too much slack between my fly and my indicator, which is floating on the surface, and vice versa. I don't want the indicator pulling the fly down at an unnatural pace. I want the fly to kind of dead drift with the current and the indicator to be set right. So in general, as a general rule, what you start with is you go about 1 foot higher than the depth of the water. So if I'm going to, and that's just a general rule, if I'm fishing a 4-foot run, I'm going to put my indicator about 5 feet up my leader. And so I'm going to, you know, I'm just going to kind of guesstimate here and say that right around here is 5 feet. And these are really easy to use, and that's why I like them. I take a lot of guided trips and instruction clinics, and you know, for the changing water conditions, a lot of time we'll move to different locations on the stream, and these things are convenient because you don't have to take them off. Once you put them on, you can actually move them. So I'm actually going to fold my fly line or my leader over and crease it and feed it through this hole at the top of the indicator. Once I got it through there, I'm just going to put that loop over top of the indicator and pull my line tight so that it stays on there like that. Now I've got my indicator. This is a 7.5 foot leader, so it's roughly 5.5 feet up the leader from where my fly would be, which would be very good if I was fishing a 4 to 4.5 foot run. Sometimes you know, that's not set in stone. You might find something that works better at different locations and different current speeds. But in general, a good place to start with these is figure out the depth that you're fishing and set it about 1 foot up from that depth to give yourself about 1 foot of play. And that little bit is just enough, but not too much. When a trout takes your fly and your indicator's floating on the surface, your indicator will make a little stop, or it'll dip under a little bit. It's not like a bobber when you're fishing with worms. It doesn't go under and stay under. A lot of times it just has a little movement, and you'll want to key in on those tiny little micro movements and get ready to set your hook. But the cool thing about these is if I'm going to move to a different location in the stream that's only 2 feet deep, I'm just going to take the small end of my leader, basically where the fly is tied on, and I'm going to shorten it. I'm going to feed that. I'm going to push it through and open up that loop a little bit, and that's going to feed me line. And right there is probably 6 inches. And I'm going to pull it with this one to lengthen. So now I've just made this shallower on my leader, shallower in the water. And it's that easy. That's why I like them. I think the stick-on indicators, because they're more disposable, they're really cheap. But I would personally, if I'm going to use one, I would rather it be reusable. You can move it anywhere on the stream. It takes less time, you know, than having to pull on the stick-on and then put a new one on. And I just think in general, if you're going to fish with strike indicators, these little guys right here are the most versatile.